Hey guys, I am back home in my normal setup. I'm back from the Halo World Championships, extremely jet lagged, extremely tired, but as you can tell by that rather juicy title, we've got quite a bit to talk about. Some news, some stuff that I discovered upon talking to certain members of Halo Studios at the event, and a ton more. We've got a stacked video, let's get into it. So, I'm not going to keep you guys hanging for the juiciest part of the video. Yes, I spoke to people from Halo Studios at the event. I got reached out to from a number of people in rather higher positions at the studio, saying that they wanted to meet me at the event and have a chat with me, and, well, two of them in particular had some really interesting stuff to say. The first person I spoke to, his name was Josh. I didn't get a surname, and he was, I believe, the cinematic director. And by the way, they'd all seen my videos, they all watch my videos actively, so they know what we're talking about over here. And, well, Josh knew that I was rather a big fan of his work. I have been extremely positive about the cinematics in this remake so far. It's the one part of the game that I am unabashedly glazing with all the love in my heart because I think they look incredible, and the stuff that Josh told me made me even more excited for the ones that we've not seen yet. So one of the things that he really drove home was more of an emphasis on kind of like tactical and military animations in the game. Specifically, he mentioned that they hired a mocap actor from a certain movie that came out earlier this year. I'm not going to say which one because I don't want to give away too many details, but it's a movie that I love from a director that I adore that's kind of in that wheelhouse, and he was saying that there's a lot of that sort of language in the cutscenes in the remake. He was also saying as well that the kind of idea with the cutscenes in this remake is not to recreate the original cutscenes one-to-one, but to kind of like go through the main story beats and the elements of the cutscenes, but kind of weave around them and approach those main beats in a different way, which, in my opinion, is exactly what a remake should be doing with cutscenes, and I think that's why they look so good. It was very clear that Josh just kind of got it, you know, like he gets the Halo feel, he gets the Halo vibe, but he also has his own direction that he wants to put onto it, which I think is very important because of course you've got to understand the Halo tones and you've got to understand Halo at its core, which he did, but you also need somebody with a clear vision and direction of their own to apply to that also fits with it. Kind of like how Jason Jones was back in the day. Like Jason Jones, obviously he got Halo because he was Jason Jones, but he always had a very clear and very unique vision for where he wanted to go with the story. That was present in Marathon, it was present in Halo, it was present early on in Destiny as well, and honestly, speaking to Josh, I kind of got those vibes, at least pertaining to the cutscenes with him. He seemed like a very directed person when it came to the work that he was doing, which gave me a ton of hope. And also, I think that vision is kind of apparent from the cutscenes that we've seen so far, like the intro to the silent photographer, the elite in the tunnel, and also Chief in the shafted cutscene. Very clearly, they are all remakes of the original cutscenes that hit all the same story beats, but they just have added flavor and detail to them that the original didn't have, and I think it gives them so much more life whilst having them still feel faithful and familiar. So I cannot wait to see what he's done with the other cutscenes because, well, I'm not gonna, okay, I don't want to give anything away, but he hinted at one cutscene in particular and the way that they've done it in the remake, and I'm sorry this sounds like I'm teasing, I promise I'm not trying to like blue ball anybody, but I just don't want to give too much away, but he said that the way they're gonna do this cutscene, like, I got chills when he said it. I'm sorry, I know this is a dickhead thing to do, and I know most of you are probably screaming at me in the comments right now, but like, all I'll say is, okay, this, you probably won't get this, but just hold on. That's all I do. That is all I'm going to give away because I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to give too much away, but I am extremely excited to see that in game because it's going to look fucking awesome. And another thing that he mentioned, which was a bit of a recurring tone, which you'll be very happy to hear, was that they all agree that the Flood, and specifically 343 Guilty Spark, needs more of a horror focus. Like everyone I spoke to agreed that Halo 1 Anniversary absolutely didn't do that, and that their intent with this remake is to absolutely do that. And I mean, obviously all we saw from 343 Guilty Spark in the Vidoc was like a second of the dev tools, but I gotta say, even in that 1 second, the way that the lighting breaks through those trees almost gives me like a gothic horror vibe. So I definitely have faith in them nailing the Flood and the atmosphere of the Flood in this game. I have, can't believe I'm about to say this, I have zero fears about them fucking it up. And then the other person that I spoke to was Max Schlagor, who is the creative director of the game, who has been working at 343/Hidden Studios for like a decade now. I believe he was brought on for MCC, and he was with it as it went to PC and all that stuff, so he knows classic Halo pretty well. I'm gonna be honest, I'm gonna just set the tone here. I had a long chat with Max at like an hour and a half, and I can't remember everything that he told me, so this section is going to be a little bit light, but I did talk to Max a lot about things that I wasn't a fan of, like Sprint, for example, and how it's going to affect the pacing of the game, and also how it's going to affect certain music cues and certain environmental cues that it might miss. And I also spoke to him a lot in detail about the aesthetic of the game, and the fact that I really am not a fan of the fact that they're reusing so many infinite assets. And again, there's probably stuff that I'm forgetting. My apologies for that. I barely slept all week. But he did say that they're reviewing the art assets every week, which to me, I think may have been a subtle hint at keep giving feedback because we are listening. And that actually, real quick, that is one thing I do want to say. They are listening 100%. There's probably quite a lot of people online who are adamant that Halo Studios aren't listening to feedback at all. And speaking to a lot of people at the studio physically at the event, they all watch my videos and probably watch a lot of other people's videos as well. They are not blind to the feedback, they hear it. So regarding the art assets, if you want Halo 1 assets in this game, which, I mean, it's a Halo 1 remake, you probably should do, then just keep the pressure up. Be constructive, don't be nasty, don't be an asshole, but most people aren't, to be honest. There's some people that are, of course, but most people are pretty fair. Just be constructive, tell people what you want and why you want it, right? And for me, I want the Halo 1 Elites, I want the Halo 1 Marines, I want the Halo 1 Needler, I want the Halo 1 Jackals, I want the Halo 1 Grids, etc, etc. The Halo 1 Fauna aesthetic. Why? Because this is a Halo 1 remake. It can't retread the same missteps as CE Anniversary, which was just Halo Reach Evolved. This game cannot be Halo Infinite Evolved. It needs to be Halo 1 Campaign Evolved, right? So keep the pressure up with that, keep giving constructive criticism, but Max did say that they are reviewing art assets every week. Oh, and another thing that Max said as well, he massively reiterated the emphasis on the Flood and the horror aspects of the Flood as well. He loves the Flood, he's very down for making them more horrified, if that's even a word. So again, just to reiterate, I don't think we're in for any kind of rough spots with the Flood in this game. I have a feeling, fingers crossed, they're going to nail it. So, moving on to some more levels, in some articles that have released in the last few days, or ones that I've missed, there's been some new details revealed about certain levels beyond Silent Cartographer, in particular, 343 Guilty Spark and the Library. So, regarding Guilty Spark, in the remake, they've said that they're adding new lines to Guilty Spark, which guide the player through the level, and there's also new dialogue that gives more insight into the narrative as it plays out. And I'm kind of mixed on this, to be honest with you. I'm all for new dialogue. I want new dialogue. I want new dialogue that fleshes out certain parts of the game that either didn't exist in Halo 1 or that Bungie just never added anything for. But at the same time, specifically pertaining to 343 Guilty Spark, I think one of the best elements about the first half of that level is how unguided it feels. Obviously, you kind of know where to go because the level design is so good that you get a rough idea, but it doesn't walk you down like a fixed path. It doesn't walk you with your hand being held. It feels eerie, it feels quiet, it feels massively unfamiliar. And I think if you start adding loads of dialogue to assist the player in getting from point A to point B, or to make it way easier for the player to not get lost, I think you're going to lose a lot of the charm of that level, because just how eerie the facility feels when you go down there with obviously the Covenant running away from something in the tunnel that's not there, and then all the dead bodies and the insane Marine. I think if you start adding some kind of guided dialogue to help you get through that in a quicker format, it's not going to end well. And the same goes for getting lost as well. I just feel like because this was our first experience, besides obviously Spirit of Fire stuff, in a foreign facility, broadly speaking at least, in the Halo universe, it should feel difficult to comprehend, and the rooms and the architecture should feel unfamiliar and almost slightly nonsensical for us to navigate. Of course, they're not entirely nonsensical, but they shouldn't feel familiar to us. And I really hope that they don't kind of hold the player's hand to get them to the Flood reveal, because the whole vibe of the build-up to that is in the eerie quietness, and if there's loads of characters talking over you, or if Fohammer's constantly chiming in, telling you stuff, telling you where to go, or one of my fears is that they take Cortana to 343 Guilty Spark. I don't think they will do, because they've been pretty adamant about not breaking any story stuff, and obviously it's kind of important for her to stay back at the control room for when you and Spark arrive back there, but that was a thought that kind of crossed my head. I really hope they don't do that. Keep the quietness, keep the eeriness, and keep the almost maze-like structure of the facility, because that's part of the charm. That said though, the new dialogue, there is absolutely room to add new stuff in there. I mean, dude, one of the best examples, specifically after the flood reveal, would be something with that area where the Marine and the Jackal held off against the flood together. That was such a cool... It wasn't even a vignette in Halo 1, just such a cool little bit of environmental storytelling, and I would love to see some actual expansion on that. But then of course there's room for more insane Marines, and hell, they could even do like an insane elite as well, because now... For better or worse, the elites in Halo 1 speak English now in the remake, so they could have an elite that had gone insane as well and was gone crazy because he'd seen the flood and he didn't believe that his gods had created something so evil or had fought something so evil. There's so much room there for extra dialogue that doesn't handhold the player from point A to point B, and I really hope that's the direction they go. And then moving on to everybody's favourite Halo 1 level, they had some stuff to say about the library as well. We learned from Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary that there was still an appetite for things like better wayfinding, navigation, and diversity in enemy encounters. In the library specifically, which features several flood encounters, we wanted to reevaluate the pacing and enhance the environmental storytelling. Now, I am one of the few people who actually kind of loves the library, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm right and everybody's wrong, because even Bungie themselves don't like the library. I mean, just listen to this from the official Halo 1 developer commentary.
I remember liking this level a lot.
I like the library.
I want to play it right now.
Absolutely.
Good work, Tyson.
That was good stuff.
Tyson has gotten a bad rap for this level. I love this level.
I fully admit that I am probably in the wrong in that opinion, but regardless, these changes to me mostly sound hopeful. I'm not going to say good yet because we haven't seen them, but they sound on paper very good. So, as for diversity in enemy encounters, that's something that there's a lot of room for doing with the library, and there's multiple different avenues they can take. Of course, the biggest example of that would be adding the Covenant to the library, which is something that many modders have done already, and it's something that, even though it's not canon as to up to now, I'd actually be okay with that, to be honest with you. Maybe have, like, the canon be that some rogue group of Covenant defied the prophets and broke into the library, and it's a small contingent, but they've managed to like hunker down in there, or, you know, something like that. Honestly, you know what you could do? I just had a really cool idea. What if, right, even though this maybe wouldn't make a load of sense and the timeline, either way, maybe there's a small contingent of Governors of Contrition within the Arbiter's fleet, and they break off from his fleet when they find the flood. They realize that their gods actually do exist, and they go into the library to feed themselves to them. Something like that, you know? There's room for that. There's absolutely room for that. They could also do stuff as well with the pure forms. I mean, I assume they will do with the tank form. That's one thing I did want to mention, actually. I brought up the idea of, obviously, tank forms not being able to exist in Halo 1, besides if they had them in a tank or something. Well, that's the way that they could do it. They could have them in the plasma banks in the library, and so when you walk past those massive blue walls, like tank forms smash out, almost like the Tyrant in Resident Evil 1 at the end. Have them smash out and like break containment in front of you. That would be really cool, and of course, pure forms would massively break up the variety of the enemies as well. And again, the same kind of goes for environmental storytelling as well. I mean, there's so much they could add to the library that, again, loads of mods, but in particular, Ruby's Rebalanced have just excelled at. I actually mentioned to Max Schlagor, the creative director, I told him about Ruby's Rebalanced and he knew about the mod, but I did kind of say to him, like, this mod is an incredible example at how to do a kind of re-inspired version of the library and also 343 Guilty Spark, but the library in particular, because that mod had so much environmental storytelling. There were piles of infected bodies stacked high and set on fire by the Sentinels. There was biomass everywhere. There's so much they could do. Of course, the biggest one would be adding the body of Marvin Mobuto, which, given the book that we're going to talk about in a minute, is probably going to happen, to be honest with you, but having more Marines who were taken there by Spark who died, having their bodies littered around everywhere as well. There's so much they could do to make that level feel more active and more engaging, and I think Ruby was the greatest example of doing that, honestly. That said though, when it comes to improving the wayfinding and navigation of the library, my same worries here are echoed as they were in Guilty Spark. Sure, make it a little bit more easy to navigate, but please don't make it just one massive straightforward line. Keep some of the dead hallways, keep some of the weird paths that don't quite make sense. At the end of the day, this is a structure that we aren't familiar with. It shouldn't be easy to navigate. It should guide you through it. The arrows on the floor should guide you through it, but you shouldn't be handheld through it. I really don't want that vibe lost, because as strange as it sounds on paper, the concept of getting lost in these environments, as long as it's not happening constantly, isn't a bad thing, because it makes you take them in more, especially in a game that has sprint and is on average going to have players missing more of the environment than if it didn't have it. I feel like you need that even more. You need kind of dead hallways that make you take in the environment and take in the atmosphere of the area that you're in. Oh, and one last thing actually real quick about the level The More. They've not revealed anything yet, but there's something that I actually kind of didn't notice / got wrong in my initial reveal. The More, the concept art we've seen so far for it, is actually indicative of the Halo 1 storyboard idea for The More that Bungie had. So Bungie's original idea with The More was to have the autumn cut in half, which would have explained the massive gap that we go through in the Warthog run. And here in this concept art for the remake, it's looking like they're going with that storyboarded version, which honestly, I prefer to the version that Bungie went with in the end, because it just makes way more sense, right? And I'm assuming as well that that's going to tie into the Warthog run, because you can literally see the Warthog jumping the gap in the environmental concept art. So I'm very excited to see what they do with that level. That's an example of a genuinely good and beneficial change that breaks nothing and just adds to the game. Oh, one thing real quick. Thank you all very much for voting for me. Your boy is now an officially award-winning Halo content creator. I cannot thank you guys enough for everybody who voted me in the Community Commendation Awards. I won the Legacy Content Creator Award, as you can see right here. Genuinely, thank you all so much. This means a ton. Having some kind of, I mean, I've had loads of recognition, you know, but like something like this is a kind of recognition that I've never experienced before, and it really does mean a lot. So thank you again for voting for me. I really appreciate it. And of course, again, thank you to Halo Respawn and to Callie for putting the awards on. It was really, really awesome. Yeah, thank you again. I appreciate it. Love you all. So let's move on now and talk a little bit about the Johnson DLC extra levels right now, which, I'm not gonna lie, is still quite an insane set of words to say, but it's real. So, we got some new details about these levels, and it kind of breaks a lot of our theories. So a lot of us have thought like, ooh, maybe these levels are set during Reach on Gamma Station, or maybe it's a recreation of the events of Silent Storm. Nope, none of the above. These are entirely new stories that specifically tell a story that hasn't been seen in Halo before. It's said that they're set earlier than Reach, which makes sense given that in the storyboards, Chief was wearing Mark IV, which means it's going to be the first time that we, at least in a game, ever see Chief wearing Mark IV, which I'm very excited for. And the levels themselves are meant to be the type of missions that the two, Chief and Johnson, would go on as they were building a relationship. So, Mark IV, early on in Chief and Johnson's story, it could be anywhere from like the, I don't know, late 2520s to 2530s, which actually, interestingly speaking, the 2530s, that kind of decade of the Covenant War, is massively underdeveloped. There's like not many events that we know of that go on in that time period compared to the 2520s and the 2540s. So maybe they use it as an excuse to flesh some of that out. They also said that the new levels are also going to have new schools on them as well. All in all, I am very, very excited for these levels. I cannot wait to see what they do with them. Having Chief and Johnson together in a set of extra levels that act as a prequel for Halo 1, man, I really, really hope that this extra attention on Johnson also means that we get some kind of like, I don't know, legendary ending that, of course, includes the elite hug, but also shows him getting off Alpha Halo. Turn breaking quarantine into a cutscene like Day at the Beach in Halo 2 or something like that. Man, oh, I hope they do that. But either way, they are the new details about the prequel levels. Now, something very important that I need to raise to Halo Studios is that for some strange reason, the Halo 1 remake has no localization, so no voice lines for specifically Brazilian Portuguese, which, given how big the game is in that region and how many Halo fans there are in that region, is very strange and absolutely needs changing. I was brought to awareness of this on Twitter, and I figured I'd mention it here because Halo Studios, I know they watch my videos. I know that a lot of the people pretty high up in the studio watch my videos. So I know you're watching this right now. Make sure that's a priority for launch. That's going to be a large chunk of fans who kind of can't enjoy this game if you don't do it. So thank you. So, something that I am very excited for. This is actually the most excited that I've ever been for a Halo book, to be quite honest with you. They announced at Worlds that there is going to be the first Halo horror book releasing next year called Halo Parasites Week. And it's about the one and only Marvin Mobuto. Now, if you don't know, Marvin Mobuto was briefly in the Flood. He was the Marine who Spark took to the library to retrieve the index before Chief. And of course, he dies, he doesn't do it, but he makes it, I think it was canonically to the start of the 4th level, or it might have been to the end of the 3rd level, so he got pretty far. In fact, in Halo the Flood, Chief finds his body and calls him a badass son of a bitch, so yeah, it's going to be a pretty damn good book, but trust me, it only gets better. So the book is written by a guy called Tim Lebon, whose work I wasn't familiar with until now. He's written novelizations of 30 Days of Night, which, if you haven't seen it, is, I think, the best vampire movie of all time. That is like a cult classic for me. I adore that movie, almost on a similar level of like 28 Days Later. He's written Alien books, Predator books, and he's also written a Firefly book. So not only does he very clearly get horror, and from speaking to people who know him already, they say that he's a really good horror writer, but clearly, if he gets Firefly, then, well, given how similar Firefly is to Halo and how much Bungie used Firefly as inspiration for Halo, he probably gets the vibes of Halo as well. Now, specifically, it says that the story follows Marvin Mobuto and his squad of, quote, deserters, drunken disorderlies, and murderers, as he tries to lead them back to the autumn, but of course, everything changes when the Flood are released. Very interesting setup for the story. The fact that his crew are so, like, all over the place, and different crazy characters like murderers, man, like, that's gonna be pretty dark, especially given that this is a horror book. But it gets better. So, one of my very good friends, and somebody who I genuinely believe, and I'm not capping when I say this, I'm not saying this just to his friend, is one of the best artists that I've ever seen in my entire life, is actually doing the cover art. Rythes. So I've used Rythes' art in my videos thousands of times at this point. All his art for the Flood stuff, for Zeta Halo, for the Primordial, for Mendicant Bias, I have used his art so many times. He is not only a great friend of mine, but genuinely one of the most talented artists. And above that, he's not just a talented artist, he's an artist who absolutely, unequivocally gets that old Bungie era Halo aesthetic, honestly, as much as like Shikai Wang, or Marcus Leto, or Eddie Smith, or Craig Mullins did. I am unfathomably excited for the cover art of this book, and I really hope that, again, Halo Studios, I know you're watching this video, hear me out here, this had better be only the beginning of Rythes' involvement with the franchise, because if you guys got him on to direct the art style of a game, I would I would push that game like never before. I would tolerate sprint in that game. Hear me out. And speaking of books, we actually got another update from Edge of Dawn, which is the Halo Infinite continuation book coming out in December, specifically an update about the weapon's name. Now, for years, I've said that the weapon's name should be Joyous, or Joy, because of the links to Marathon. So if you don't know, in Marathon, one of the main elements of the story were, of course, its AIs, the main AI being called Durandal. And then Halo comes out, and all of a sudden, the main AI is called Cortana. And there's a massive link between these two names, and of course, between Marathon and Halo. And that's an ancient French tale called the Song of Roland. So, long story short, it's about the King Charlemagne, who, in the story, has 3 swords. Durandal, Cortana, and Joyous. So, naming the weapon Joyous, or Joy, was a natural continuation of that story link that goes all the way back to Marathon, and they've done it. They've called the weapon Joyous, which was the only name for her, to be quite honest with you, but I love the fact that they've still done it, because it shows that there's still people at the studio who want to uphold those old school Bungie Marathon connections in Halo's lore, which are key to the backbone of Halo's universe. And yeah, it's great to hear that they're still going to be doing that. I'm very happy with that. And finally, a little update on something kind of weird, but something I'm really excited for that's coming from Halo going to PlayStation. Still feels weird to say that. And that's the fact that the DualSense controller is going to be getting some updates for the Halo 1 remake. Now, if you don't know, the DualSense controller, even though the Xbox One I think still feels better to hold, the DualSense is full of really good technology. In particular, adaptive triggers and haptic feedback. So the adaptive triggers are basically like the more you squeeze a trigger, it can have certain properties like more vibration or more tension. So for example, one of the things they say on the website is that if you're like drawing a bow, the more you pull it, the harder it gets and the more vibration you get to kind of imitate the feeling in game. And they say that they're going to be working with PlayStation to have haptic feedback and adaptive triggers for the remake, which will feel incredible. I'm not gonna lie, I might have to buy this game on PlayStation 5 solely for the weird factor of playing Halo on PlayStation. So strange. So anyway, I've waffled quite a lot in this video, so I'm gonna round it out there. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I'm not gonna lie, I'm really excited to be getting back to these semi-scripted, semi-waffly, kind of chatty news videos about something that I am quite excited for. Of course, I've got a lot of reservations with this game, and none of those reservations have gone away. I still hate Sprint. I still wish the game didn't look like Halo Infinite, but at the same time, there is a lot about this game that I am excited for, and I want to talk about that as well. I'm going to talk about both the positives and the negatives. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I'm not going to be doom and gloom when I don't need to be. I'm just going to be my good old-fashioned, honest self, as I always have been in videos. If something's bad, I'll call it shit, and I'll say why. If something's good, I'll call it great, and I'll say why. It really is that simple. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Good to be getting back to this. And with that said, I'm going to round this video out there. I want to give a huge thank you to all of my amazing patrons for the continued support over there. As per usual, thank you all so much. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all, by the way, to everyone who I met at Halo Worlds. I've never met so many of you guys in one weekend before. At one point, there was a line of for like an hour, which is insane. You guys queued for an... I cannot thank you all enough. You're awesome. I love you all. Meeting you all was fucking amazing. I can't wait to do it again. Halo Fest next year is going to be so good. I cannot wait. Thank you all genuinely so much, and I'll catch you all in the next one.